HEX Gaming have built upon their Blade controller for Xbox using new extreme rate controller mods to level up their offering in the Pro controller market. Doubling the number of back buttons to 4, adding new shell designs, and giving more options for hair triggers brings this controller much closer to the established names of Scuff, Razer, and of course, the mighty Microsoft Elite controller. But can the HEX Gaming Advance controller stand up to their competitors in a 1v1? Well, let's take a look. The packaging for the Advance, it's not quite as cool as it was for the Blade if I'm honest. They have cut back a little bit on the experience here, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. The Blade box was so hard to get into, it took me absolutely ages. The box for the Advance though is nice and simple though, so it's all good. First thoughts here are that there is no case for the controller, unlike the Blade. This is a shame as it is nice to have a case to put your controller in, and the spare thumbsticks as well. The sticks are hidden away inside the box. Instead of coming in a little bag, they are now in this HEX Gaming branded case, which is a nice touch. Much easier to store, especially without a controller case to stash them in. The controller is stored in another simple packaging method, so let's get the controller out of there. And here it is. Normally I go for single tone shells, but I thought I'd go for something different here. I liked the 90s design and colours on this, and it comes with a little HEX Gaming tag to let you know where it's from. For once, I mixed up the colours of the buttons and D-pad to match the colours near to each component, so they feel more like a part of the design. As we get round to the back, I followed the purple across the bumpers and triggers, transitioning to a red rear shell to match the red hair triggers, as there were not many colours for the hair triggers. With the back buttons, there was a lack of colours to be honest, so I went off track here and just went with a chameleon blue purple, which is the same colour I went with for the front shell of my HEX Blade controller. So this is how it looks. Now let's talk about the options available for the new Advance and the key things this controller has going for it. Although there are many Pro controllers on the market, HEX is a brand that's not quite as well established, but they do bring something a little different to the scene. Unlike the top competitors such as Microsoft, Razer, and to a degree Scuff, they offer huge amounts of customization at the purchasing stage. You can customize every visible part of the controller so that you have a design that is unique to you. All controllers are built from the official Microsoft controllers and can be pretty easily customized more after purchase with any official Extreme Rate aftermarket parts. Of course, just being able to customize this design isn't enough for you to spend a load of extra money on a default controller. So what puts the HEX Advance in a league the same or close to the likes of Scuff? The HEX Blade controller had 2 back buttons, but with the new Advanced controller you now get 4 back buttons. That's now the same as pretty much every other Pro controller out there. They have also improved the process of mapping the back buttons since the Blade, which is great. You have the options of standard grips, grips with hair triggers, or digital hair triggers. The final offering is swappable thumbsticks with a total of 6 thumbsticks coming as standard. Now let's talk about the back buttons. They can be mapped to perform the same function as any other button on the controller, including the D-pad. Unlike the Elite and the new Scuff Instinct, you cannot save multiple profiles, which is a shame if you are the type to play a lot of different games frequently. Remapping is simple enough though, thanks to a new switch on the rear, which is much quicker than the big boy controllers can offer using their software. When it comes to grips, if you have no need for hair triggers, you can save money and get default triggers. Although you could get hair triggers on the Blade, the Advance now introduces the new Extreme Rate hair trigger grips, which have a fancy moulding to fit the hands better. This is what I went for, and they allow you to switch between regular triggers and hair triggers. What's really new is the addition of Extreme Rate's clicky mod applying digital triggers. I did a video on this kit and it reduces the triggers pull to a mere 1.5mm. That's nuts, and it's pretty much the response of pressing a face button. These work very well and allow very quick action for shooters. However, you cannot disable the feature, meaning that any game requiring analog functionality of the triggers, such as racing games, they just won't work. If you play anything other than FPS, then avoid this option. On first use, the remap and hair trigger switches are really stiff and not easy to use quickly. Once you've switched them a few times though, they settle down and become much more usable. Remapping buttons on the Blade used to involve holding down several buttons to enter remap mode, and you kind of needed to do it with the controller upside down so you could see the light go on and know you were good to go. Now though, with the Advance you just have a little switch. Flip the controller over, flick the switch, and the blue light comes on. Then you can remap. Once done, flip the switch again, blue light goes off, and the buttons are ready. Much easier. If you want to unassign a button on the back, simply enter mapping mode and map the same button that it's already mapped to. The blue light will flash red confirming that it's unassigned. To unassign all buttons at once, just simply hold down left bumper, right bumper, Y and B for 3 seconds. Fairly straightforward. People will tell you, just play claw. That's not what back buttons are about though. It's why you can map more than just face buttons. Crouch and reload are good ones to map to the rear, for example. I like to frequently map stick presses or bumpers as well, depending on what function they have in game. The buttons are nicely placed. They aren't in a position that means I use my fingertips. I kind of use the middle part of my index and middle fingers of each hand. This means my fingers rest on the buttons in a fairly natural position. They have a decent click and aren't too light to press, unlike the original Elite controller paddles were. I think after the Elite Series 2, these are my favourite back buttons on any controller. Certainly better than the scuffs of old, though I haven't used the scuff Instinct, which does look interesting. I went for regular hair triggers, and these are the breath of fresh air, to be honest. With newer controllers, there has been an increase in making triggers having even shorter pull, but to me it doesn't feel right. The Elite Series 2 has 2 different levels of hair trigger, and even the first setting is a little too short for my taste. I don't even use the max level on my Elite, it just doesn't feel right. With the Advanced though, the single level of hair trigger is similar to the first Elite and it's just right for me. Not too short and not too long when it comes to the pull distance. I like these triggers, and of course you can just switch them on and off independently at will depending on what is needed. The controller comes with 6 thumbsticks that you can switch by simply pulling the stick off of the controller and putting the new one on. These are not magnetized, they just wedge firmly in place. They are never going to fall off though, so nothing to fear here. The concave sticks have a texture that stops your thumbs from slipping off. These are decent sticks. They are plastic and time will tell how long they will last. They do feel more durable than previous scuff thumbsticks though, which did have a bit of a reputation for wearing out relatively quickly. Outside of those key features, the controller feels nice and sturdy. There are no rattles, nothing feels loose, and it just feels comfortable in the hands. So let's not mess around here. This controller cost is about £180, and that does include the 5% discount that you get if you use code TootXB at the checkout. That's £30 more than the Microsoft Elite Series 2, which has a lot more features. When you look at the price of this compared to probably the best Pro controller out there, it's difficult not to compare. It's important to note though that this controller only costs so much because I customized everything on it. If you go for the base controller and only add the trigger stops that I added, then the price, before using the TootXB discount code, is about £147, so just a little bit less than the Elite. The closest big name competitor to HEX is probably Scuff, and their Instinct models start at £170 with fewer customization options, so HEX certainly has an advantage on price in the market. Is it worth it? If you're in the market for a Pro controller, the base model of the HEX Advance will no doubt serve you just as well as a lot of the controllers out there. The price is aligned and mostly lower than other Pro controllers if you don't customize it, but I think customizing this is essential as not many companies let you do this, so budget to add some extra money here. If you value personalization over a ton of fancy features that you probably won't use or will set once and forget about, then the HEX is worth a look for sure.